Good morning, gentlemen. Today is Daf Pei Ayin, Maseches Eruvin. So we left off with the Mishnah at the bottom of Pei Amud Beis. So the Mishnah says, and it was actually B'chol Marvin U'Mishtatvin Chutz Min Hamayim Min Hamelach Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. Says Rebbe Eliezer. Actually, we've seen this before. Those of you recall, and the Gemara actually asked on it because I was also puzzled. Mishnah says you can with any types of food you can make an eruv or do a shitavi for your mavli, except for water, right? That's not a sustenance, right? Or salt. There's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shua Aimer. Rabbi Shua says no. Dafka kikar hu eruv. You have to use a kikar. You have to use a loaf of bread for your eruv. And afilu ma'afa sa. And even if you go ahead and you make a very large challah, v'hu prusa. However, it's broken. You broke it. There's a piece that's broken off of it. It's not shalem, right? Ein marvin ba. You can't use it for the eruv because it's a broken piece of challah. You have to use a whole one, right? Like we use lechem mishum. You look for whole challah. So too, your eruv should be a whole challah. And kikar ke'isar, if it's very small, b'hu shalim, however it's whole, then ma'arvin bo. Then you can go ahead and use it for eruv because it is a whole. It's a full complete challah, even though it's small. That is the opinion of Rabbi Shua. So it's not necessarily quantity, according to Rabbi Shua. Rather, it has to be bread, and it has to be a full loaf. So let's see the Gemara, the Gemara on the top of Pei Aleph, Amud Aleph. So Tanina Chadazimna, well, what are you talking about, right? You weren't going crazy when you looked at the Mishnah. We actually had this very similar Mishnah earlier. We said earlier, with everything, you can go ahead and make an eruv, shituvei mavui, except for water or salt. So Amarabba le'afuki ve'Rishua. Maybe over there is to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. The Amar kikar in midiyach lo. So over there, right? So to exclude maybe only a kikar. A kikar, yes, but and something else, no. Kamash malan b'chol. Therefore, it says b'chol. Maybe you would have thought only you could use bread, but nothing else. Therefore, it says our Mishnah says, right? Bakol marvin, right? Everything you can go ahead and use except for salt and water. So Eisvei Abai as a kash. It says b'chol marvin erev chatzeros b'chol mishtatvim b'shituvei mavayos. It says over there with everything. Go ahead and be. You can use anything for an erev chatzeros or for shituvei mavayos. And v'lo yamru erev b'pas la'erev b'pas el b'chatzer bilva, right? And now what you said you have to use bread is only for a chatzer, only for a chatzer. So so who's the one who says bread? Yes. Other things, no. That's Rabbi Shua. That is the opinion of Rabbi Shua. And it says over there b'chol. So you can't say it's lafuki Rabbi Shua because we see over there Rabbi Shua even says b'chol. No, to exclude a different halacha of Rabbi Yeshua, not in terms of using bread and nothing else. We see that he calls hold even other things. So Ella. So rather to exclude the other parts of Rabbi Shua, to exclude the opinion of that which we say you can go ahead and only can use a whole challah and not a broken piece. So kamash malan b'chol. Therefore, we see from here that according to the beginning of our mission, the reason why Rabbi Eliezer teaches again is that when he says b'chol, it's not necessarily just to teach you bread, right? That we already know, right? But rather to go ahead and even teach you. Not only bread, right? Not only bread, but rather what he comes to teach you is that it can be any type of challah, even if it's broken, right? Bakol. And then which argues with Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Eliezer argue on that. Rabbi Yeshua says it has to be a whole challah, and Rabbi Yeshua says it has to be a whole challah, and Rabbi Eliezer, who's the Tanakama, says it could be bakol. Any type of bread is, as long as it's big enough, would be sufficient for the erev chatzeros. Prusa my time alone. For the Prusa, what's the reason why not? So Rabbi Yesi ben Shol, Rabbi Mishum Eva, because people get upset. Someone brings a nice challah, and somebody brings a broken piece of challah. So therefore, not to go ahead and cause any sort of strife between neighbors. Therefore, everyone should go ahead and bring a whole nice challah. Or whoever is bringing to the eruv should go ahead and do a whole one. And Amalei Ravacha Braid the Rav Lavashi. So eruv kulam prusas mahu. What about everyone? There's a broken piece, right? So no one's going to be angry at the other one, right? Because if everyone brings a broken piece, then there's going to be no strife between the neighbors. So perhaps what's going to happen? Some people start bringing whole ones again, and there are still people bringing broken ones, and therefore it will cause animosity towards one another. And therefore, that's the reason why we say only bring a whole challah and not a broken piece. And Amar Rabbi Yechanan ben Shal Nitla Heimena Kedei Chalasa, if it was removed from there, a small portion, as even the ratio or the fraction of which is taken out for challah, or kadei dimua, or even something which is taken for dimua, right? When something becomes dimua is basically when you have truma, which is mixed with chulin and it falls in. If it's less than 100th, right? Then it's basically it's bottle, right? So if it's less than 100th, then also if that amount was taken out off of the challah, right? So you have a small fraction amount, either a challah's worth or even the dimua, ma'arvin lo. But you can go ahead and be ma'arif. You can use that for an eruv. It's not considered to be broken. We learned something else that says if it's less than 100, then you can go ahead and use it for your eruv. However, you can't go ahead and use it. So we see a brayso over here that says beferish that if it's the amount of challah that was removed from it, would have been good for challah. So if that amount was removed from this whole challah, it's no longer considered whole. It's no longer usable for an eruv. So loikasha ha bechalas nachtam ha bechalas balabayas. Right. I purposely didn't explain it because there's two types of chalas. Right. There's the challah. There's the amount that you remove from a baker, right? Bakers, what's the difference between a baker and a person who bakes a household? A baker typically goes ahead and builds a larger loaf. So if they build a larger loaf, there's a smaller amount, right, in terms of the total amount that you give to the Kohen, right? It's not necessarily proportional to large Kohen, it's the amount. So therefore, if you have a very large challah or large dough that you're making, you only need a smaller fraction. Versus if I'm just making a regular size challah, then the fraction, because it's the same amount of size, will be larger percentage wise of the challah. The Tanana is learned in the Mishnah. Shir challah echad mi'esrim ve'arba. The shear of a challah is 1/24th. So you take 1/24th of the dough, and then you go ahead and that goes to the Kohen. Ha'isa isa li'atzmo. Or one bakes the bread for himself, or Yisrael Mishta Beno, or one who makes a bread for the wedding of his son. That's a regular type of loaf. That's a balabatish loaf, and therefore you take 1/24th because it's a smaller size. Therefore you take 1/24th. However, nachtom, when it comes to a baker, she'oisa limkor bashuk, a baker who is going to go ahead and sell it in the shuk, so therefore he makes a much larger amount, so he doesn't have to go ahead at 1/24th. This is a very large amount. So what does he do? So to a woman, right, who goes ahead and basically she has her own home business, right? She bakes bread and she sells it at the shuk. That's 1/48th. So therefore, that which we said it's a small amount that you can still go ahead and use it for an eruv, that was referring to 1/48th. So if you have 1/48th of a challah falls away, that's still considered to be a good challah when it comes to an eruv. However, if 1/24th, right, comes to the challah, which is a challah of a balabayas, that is no good because that challah is now considered to be lacking. And Omer Rav Chizda Tifra Bekisa Marvin Laba. If one goes ahead and let's say he reattaches it, right? He reattaches it with a kisam, right, the splinter, with a toothpick. He puts it back in, and basically the challah breaks and he fixes it back. Marvin laba, you can go ahead and make it use it for an eruv. Time learn rice a marvin laba. You can't go ahead and reuse it if you can't reattach it. So like kasha ha the other tifra ha the other tifra. What is if you can notice it? If you can notice it, it's obvious it's two pieces, therefore it's no good. But however, it's noticeable that it's not two pieces. It's not noticeable that it's two pieces, then it would be sufficient to go ahead and use it for your eruv. And Amar Abzera Amar Shmuel Ma'arvin Bepas Oirez Upas Deichen. One can go ahead and use eruv even with bread made of oirez, made of rice, or bread made of millet. And Amar Maruk for Ladidim virtually meaning the Marshmuel is that what Shmuel says, but Pas Oirez Marvin, Pas Deichen A Marvin. Right, you can go ahead and use oirez, you can go ahead and use rice bread, but you can't go ahead and use millet bread. And Amar Rav Chibar Avin Amar Rav Ma'arvin Bepas Adoshim. You can go ahead and use lentil bread. So Aini is this true? One time, right, there was a Maisa of during the years of when Shmuel was around, and someone gave it to a dog, right? This lentil bread, right, and it didn't eat it, right? So didn't eat it. So you see, right, even the dogs don't eat it. So how could you say that you can go ahead and use lentil bread for your eruv? So the shar minim habi. No, that wasn't just lentil bread. That was a lot of different grains together. The Chassid pasuk says, over there the pasuk says, and Yecheskel, go ahead and take it all and all these different grains and put it together and you'll not eat this bread, right? Basically, it talks down about this bread. So you see that this type of bread altogether, right, is not considered to be good. I guess nowadays we have, the whole grain or all the other, all the grains together. I guess, the whole wheat,
They actually
whatever.
make Ezekiel bread now, and they sell it. They actually make bread like this. It's called Ezekiel bread, and they sell it. It's actually rather expensive.
We have it all the time.
Huh?
Now I have. It's called Ezekiel bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. See, you learn everything today. It's so fun because I go out Ezekiel bread. Okay, whatever. Like I never like put.
That's why it is.
Pasuk on the wrapper.
Everything here, and they threw it together.
Is it pasuk's on the wrapper?
Huh? Some of them have it. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. It quotes a pasuk.
It's right here. The pasuk, the Yecheskel Perik Dalet pasuk test. It says, "V'atakal chachitin sa'arim pol v'adashim v'deichem v'kusmi v'nasato tam b'kli put him in a kli echad v'asisa sam l'chal lechem. You make it for your bread. Mispar yamim ata sheichev asadecha shloish mios v'tishim yayim talchana. You should eat this bread, right? This is basically sort of a bad type of bread. You should eat this bread. But by the way, we'll soon see that this bread was not such a good bread, so they didn't really learn pshat of the pasuk because we'll see afterwards. And Rav Papa Amar, no. That bread, the reason why, so what do you see from over here? We see there was bad bread, and that's the reason why the dogs didn't eat it, because it was all the different grains together. And Rav Papa said, no, the different reason why it was cursed bread. Rav Papa Amar, how you eat sluya but soyas adam, right? That was basically cooked, right, from the tsoa adam, right, from the what's it called, from the manure people, right? That they go to the bathroom and they go ahead and. I guess they burned their dung, right? And that was what cooked the bread. So that was the reason why it was bad. So it says over there, that was what they did. And that was the type of, they cooked it, from their feces in front of them. So ugas sa'irim tachana. So why is the b'dafka called ugas sa'irim, right? Why is it called sa'irim, or the bread of sa'irim, right? Why is it called after that? So he says over there, because if it's many grains, why just barley? So Rav Chisa l'shiurim, maybe it doesn't mean sa'arim, you change it on the kudos, it means l'shiurim for this measures for the shear. And Rav Papa Amar iravsa ke'arivas sa'arim v'loy ke'arivas chitim. Now its shape was, I guess, like that of barley bread, which is not in a good appetizing shape, versus, I guess, wheat bread, which is a much more beautiful shape, and therefore that was why it was called a barley bread, even though it was many grains, as opposed to multi-grain, right? As opposed to wheat bread, which is a much nicer loaf. Fine. Now Mishnah. So we get to the Mishnah. 3 lines from the bottom on the front on Pei Aleph and Aleph. So the Mishnah says. Nas naisein adam ma lechanvani v'nachtaim kadesh yizke lo eruv divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Says Rabbi Eliezer, you want to go ahead and join the eruv, right? So you either give bread, or here's what you do: they're going to go ahead and give bread. Give money to the guy, the merchant who sells, or to the baker. Says, okay, here's $5, and then when they go ahead and get eruv, basically go ahead and I already gave my money in, and then when you give the bread, it's also from me, and therefore I'm joining in the eruv. So that was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. However, it doesn't work. Why? Because we know that when it comes to transactions, right? So a transaction is not done through money, right? If I go ahead and I buy, right, a bicycle from you, right? So I buy a bike off you and I give you $100, right? So me handing you $100 is not a kinyan. Right? It's not a kinyan, and I don't acquire the bicycle. The only way to acquire the bicycle is, by pulling it or lifting it, whatever it is, depending on the type of item, how big it is, to make some sort of physical transaction. But just handing over money does not work. So therefore, there is no kinyan. When I hand the $100 bill, right, or whatever, the $5 to the merchant, right, I don't acquire that which he's going to go ahead and give to the eruv, right? That food which he's going to give later on, that doesn't work, right? Because I never acquired. If I would have given a loaf to the baker, and then when they would have come collect for the eruv, the baker would give, my loaf also with the bread. Then it's one thing because that was mine. But by me giving him the money, it's not like I acquire it first and then give it to the eruv. That doesn't work, right? Because I just gave him the money. There's no transaction. So it says the chamim, the money does not work. However, chamim say umaydim. However, if it comes to somebody else, a non merchant, right? A non-baker, a regular person, right? When it comes to other people, that if I go ahead and give them $3, here's $5, and then basically, include me in the Eruv, that works, right? Why? Because you could only make an Eruv with someone's das, and therefore, basically, by me giving him the money, I'm making him my shaliach, right? I'm making him my shaliach because he's not a normal person that takes money, then goes ahead and buys it. That's not his job, right? He's not a merchant, he's not a baker. So therefore, if I give him money, it's basically I'm appointing him to be my shaliach to go ahead and include me in the Eruv. But when you give money to a baker, you're not appointing the baker, your shaliach. You're basically giving him business. So giving him business, the dollar doesn't work. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'med dvar murim says, Rabbi Yehuda, what are we talking about? Be'eruv v'tchumen. We're only talking about eruv v'tchumen. Aval be'eruv v'chatzeros, that's only about setting up a tchum. But when it comes to eruv chatzeros, ma'arvin l'daito v'shaloi midaito. You can always be ma'arv, right? As we saw this opinion, according to Rabbi Yehuda, which is the machlokes at the bottom of today's daf. So Rabbi Yehuda always holds that you can do a zchus for somebody, right? So since I'm doing something good for somebody, I don't need his knowledge before. Since it's a good thing, I can find the mitzvah on behalf of someone or someone else, right? I can acquire something for someone's benefit. So since it's a benefit, right, for an eruv chatzeros, there is no downside. You can carry in and out of the house and in the chatzer. There is no downside. It's a zchus. Therefore, I can do it without his knowledge, right? When it comes to eruv chatzeros, and only eruv tchumen we're talking about, that you have to go ahead, whether you give the merchant, it doesn't work. Because we can be zeicha for something without his knowledge, but if it's something which is no good, let's say Tchum Shabbos. So Tchum Shabbos, I give you 2,000, but who said I wanted this to be my center Shabbos? Maybe I want it to go more to the east or more to the west. So it's not a zchus, right? It could be it's a chov, right? It could be that you're limiting my my directions, which I could have went. So therefore, we say only by tchumen you have to appoint someone as your shaliach, or tchumen you have to go ahead and make a kinyan when it comes to the baker. Fine. So let's see. The Gemara
does this have anything to do with the fact that a wife can make an eruv, sort of what you were talking about before, on behalf of her husband without her husband knowing? Because it's to his benefit.
Right. Yes. Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly right. And so since she lives in the house, she was able to do it. Right.
Okay, I was wondering why we were able to do that, but if it's to her benefit, okay, that makes sense.
But also, right, so she's a resident of the house, and it's a good thing. So therefore, you don't need his prior approval because it's a good thing. So let's see the Gemara. So my time of the Rabbi Eliezer. What is the reason called Rabbi Eliezer? Remember, Rabbi Eliezer says if you go ahead and you give the money to the chanvani or the baker, to the merchant or the baker, in order to be part of the eruv, it works. That's between Rabbi Eliezer. What's the reason Rabbi Eliezer? Halam Mashach. He didn't do it. He didn't make a kinyan, right? The Rabbanan have a good claim. Some Rav Nachman, Ravua, Asu, Rabbi Eliezer, Kedalad Prakim B'Shana, right? Rabbi Eliezer makes this like during the 4 special times of the year, right? During basically before Yontifs, right? Before the time of the year, which is Pesach, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, and Sukkot, right? Right. So you say the time of right? These are times during the year, right? You can force a butcher to go ahead and so afilu shava, even if afilu shor shava elef dinar, ela dinar echad, right? You can go ahead and basically force them to go ahead, and let's say the butcher says, okay, I don't want to go ahead and shech meat because it's a large animal and you're only one small person. But since people regularly buy meat during these times and everyone does it, and if you don't do it, you're sort of left out, right? So therefore, if you need to go ahead and have it shechted, we'll soon see why these 4 times, what goes on. So therefore, he has to go ahead and shecht it. You only buy one part of it. Therefore, if the animal dies, then it basically died on the buyer's dime. In other words, let's say the animal's worth $1,000 and I want $100 of meat, and I'm making go ahead and shecht it, and then it dies before he shechts it, I'm out the $100. Why is that? Why does that work? I didn't do a kinyan. I didn't acquire the meat. It should only be mine, right? It's my loss if I acquire the meat. Some Rav Yehuda b'shem mashach. Well, here we're talking about he made a kinyan on the animal. If that's the case, Amos Sefer, what are the Severs here? It says, B'shari Mos Hashana, during the Shana, during the other times of the year, Einochen. It's not like this. Therefore, if the animal dies, Mace Lameicher. If it dies, then it dies on the butcher's watch, right? It was his loss. And therefore, my $100 never acquired the meat. And therefore, basically, the butcher, I get my $100 back and he's out the entire animal. Am I Hamashach? Well, didn't you just say we're talking about a case where he made a kid? If I made a kid in the animal, then I should lose my $100. We're only talking about a case where he did not make a kinyan. So if that's the case, during these 4 times of the year, right, when everyone's buying meat, why am I out the money? So right. So when basically somebody else made a kinyan on my behalf, someone else made a kinyan on my behalf, right? It was a chus hulo, right? Right? He made his chus. He basically acquired, right, the animal on my behalf. And only during these 4 times of the year when everyone has meat and I have to be like everybody else, therefore it's a chus for me, right? Therefore it's a chus. However, shari mos hashana, right, during other times of the year when he wants meat, the chov hulo, right? Because who eats meat during the other times of the year, right? And basically it's a chov, right? The next morning you're going to wake up hungry anyway. So therefore, the only thing by getting meat is you become poor, right? But if you buy meat, so therefore it's not considered to be a zechus, it's a chov. Right, and therefore, so therefore, the difference between these daled prakim is a chus, right? The other times of the year, it's a chov. So therefore, in our case, we'll say we make it like a zechus, and therefore, right, he's zachin on my behalf, the person to go ahead and make the erev chatzeros on my behalf, or the erev on my behalf. Rav Elo Amar Rav Yechanan B'dal prakim elu hamidu chachamim l'divrayim al divrei Torah. Says no. During these times of the year, the chachamim say that. We establish kinyanim like the kinyanim are meant to be midoraisa. Now, it's really midoraisa. A kesef, right, acquires things. Right, kesef acquires things. I damar Rabbi Yechanan b'chol davar Torah mos kanos. Really midoraisa. Money acquires something, right? If I go ahead and I want to purchase something from you, right, the bicycle, and I give you $100, the bike is mine, right? When I give you the $100. But midaraisa, that's on a daraisa level. But midrabanan, we say no. He doesn't really acquire it until he goes ahead and he picks up the bike. Why is that? Why do we say that dafka, right, pulling the item or picking it up, acquires it, not just money? What's going to happen? The guy gives me $100, and all of a sudden he says, "Okay, where's my wheat I bought from you?" And he says, "Oh, it was, it burnt in the attic, right?" So in other words, I have if I give him the money, that I have no incentive to give you the product. So people are going to get ripped off. So in order to avoid people getting ripped off, the seller will be very careful to take care of the product because the product is still his until he gives it over to the buyer. So therefore, we say midrabanan, Midrabanan, it only works if you go ahead and make a kinyan out of it. Fine, 2 dots. And then the Chachamim say, they argued with Rabbi Yezer and say, no, you can't give money to the merchant, right? He hasn't acquired it on your behalf, and therefore he's nobody. You didn't buy it. There's no kinyan. It doesn't work. And then, so therefore, however, the Chachamim agree. If I give a regular person money, right? If I give Randy $100 or $5, say, hey, join me in the Eruv, that works. So man shar kol adam, who's shar kol adam? Samarav balabais. It's a balabais. V'chinam Shmuel balabais. So do Shmuel explains balabais. Amar Shmuel. The only reason why they say it doesn't work if you give money to the baker, because he normally you're buying something from him, and therefore money doesn't acquire. Aval balabais. But when it comes to balabais, I'm not buying anything from Randy, right? He's doing me a favor. I basically made him my shaliach. Therefore, I kind of. V'amar Shmuel loishanu elamah. About kli kaina. We only said it doesn't work, right, with the nachtaim, with the baker, is if I give him money about kli. But if I give him a kli, right, let's say I give him some sort of handkerchief or some sort of kli vessel, that works because that's kinin chalipin. Once he takes it, we hold chalipin, right? Chalipin is when if I go ahead and I want to go ahead and basically buy your bike off you, I can go ahead and give you my pen, right? I gave you my pen, you acquire the pen, and the minute you pick up the pen, right, you acquire the pen, I acquire the bicycle. So that's called kinyan chalipin, and that was for the kli. So about kli, kaina, that would work. That's different than money. That's only when it says zachli. If I'll amar erivli, but if he gives the money to the baker and he says, make the erev for me, shaliach shavya v'kani, then he acquires, then it works, right? Because he says, make the Erev for me. He's making him a shaliach, right? If he just said, here's the money, acquire the money, so then you're buying something and you didn't do the kinyan yet. It doesn't work when the baker goes ahead and gives it to the association, right? For the chutzner. But over here it seems to work. Fine. Then Rabbi Yehuda says, but what are we talking about? We're only talking about Tchumei Shabbos, but not Erev Chatzeros. And I'm Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Halach Rabbi Yehuda, Halach like Rabbi Yehuda. V'od Ela Kol Malkum Shana Rabbi Yehuda be'erevin Halacha Kamaisa. Anytime Rabbi Yehuda says anything halachas in the erevin, the halachas like him. And Amar Lei Rav Chana Begdasa Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Afila b'mavui shenitla karaisa v'lechav. He was quoting the name of Rabbi Yehuda that if one has basically a beam up or a lechi up and it comes down in the middle of Shabbos, then it's no good. However, Rabbi Yehuda argues and says it is good. Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, even in that case, that if the beam comes down mid-Shabbos, you can still continue. That is not halacha of Erevin, that's more of a halacha of mechitzas, and therefore that's not a case necessarily the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, because that's a halacha in mechitzas, it's not a halacha necessarily in Erevin. And Amar Le Ravacha Bered the Rav Ravashi halacha of Michal Depligi. You say that halacha is like him, but there's machlokes in this case. I've Amar Rashu ben Levi Kol Malkum Sham Rabbi Yehuda Emasai Ubameh. The Mishnah saying anytime Rabbi Yehuda comes in, jumps in the Mishnah, he says Bamed Dvar Murim, right? Or Emasai. When do you say this halacha? Right? Anytime Rabbi Yehuda, like in our case, where he says Amar Rabbi Yehuda Bamed Dvar Murim, right? So Eino. Excuse me, right? It's only to explain the opinion of the Chachamim.
Bless you.
Not coming to, so we see how could, right? So how could you over here say that he's coming to argue, right? So over here we see clearly that that he's explaining the opinion of the Rabbanan, right? There's no argument here, right? So he says, so the Gemara says, I v'loi pligi, he doesn't argue. But now we learn in we had earlier in a case where he says that more people come in the middle of Shabbos, then they have to go ahead and add to the Eruv, and they have to inform them that they're adding to the Eruv on their behalf. So our answer is, like we said before, over there, we're talking about the reason you have to inform them because a person is a chatzir in the middle, there's two mavis, one on each side, and therefore, basically, it's not one case of where it's automatically a zechus because it's a chatzir and opens up to one mavui, and obviously he'll be able to carry now. Perhaps it's no good because perhaps he wanted to carry in chatzir B and not, or say mavui B and not mavui A, and who says you can make this one for him? So therefore, that's the reason why if you want to add him to your eruv or the shitufi mavui, then you have to go ahead and inform him. Where we see over here that they argue, right? That Rabbi Yehuda does clearly argue. So we see over here they clearly argue. So Ella, the Gemara answers, right? Gavra Agava Karamis, right? You're asking a kasha from Rabbi Shimon Levi on Shmuel. So Marsa Repligi, or Marsa Lo Pligi, right? Some hold that Rabbi Yehuda is not arguing, other hold that Rabbi Yehuda is arguing. Therefore, it's not necessarily a stira. One is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Levi, the other one's a Shmuel. The Shmuel says halacha because he holds. Shmuel says halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda because he holds. They argue, and Rabbi Shimon Levi held that there was no machlokes at all, and therefore there was no need to say halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. And we will stop here. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see everyone Mitzvah Shem tomorrow. Shkoyach.